Something's happening in Britain's state schools.
We just haven't got the money to pay for things anymore.
A funding crisis which teachers say is taking them to the brink and short-changing a generation of children.
It's not rocket science. These children, when they leave education, are not going to have had the same deal as those that came before.
I've spent the week looking at the issues facing heads, their staff and the children they teach.
My job security is on my mind all the time, all the time.
I saw crumbling classrooms not fit for the 21st century.
A lump of concrete did drop. Luckily it hit the side and didn't hit the class teacher.
There you have a classroom full of kids, a teacher trying to teach, and the building is literally falling apart around them.
And parents caught between blind faith and real worry.
I can't think where they're going to pull the money from, but they need to pull it from somewhere, because the education, they're the future, aren't they?
The government says schools have never been so well funded. Campaigners say that's a lie.
We're in the 21st century, we're not back in Victorian times.
So who's telling the truth?
Say good morning, everyone.
This is Tour Lane Infant School in Sowerby Bridge in Yorkshire's Calder Valley. Its head teacher is Judy Shaw.
Judy, tell me a bit about the school.
The school was built in 1879. It's a huge Victorian building with an enormous roof and grounds, and a building that just wasn't built for 21st century education. So to make it safe and attractive and watertight costs us an absolute fortune. And our capital budget quite often doesn't stretch to that, so we've patched up here and we've patched up there, and as it stands today it's watertight. The next slate that comes off the roof we're going to really struggle to fit back on.
By 2020, the government says core school funding will rise to £43.5 billion, record levels, but that's not the full picture.
Head teachers say this whole funding crisis has come about because they're being expected to pay more than ever before. National insurance costs, pensions, maintenance of schools, and the amount of money they get per pupil, they say, has not risen with inflation. All this at the same time as the money they get coming in from government has stagnated.
So a little bit like a weekly shop where somebody used to have £80 and it covered it, and now they'll be given £85, but those goods are now costing £90. And some of the goods that they didn't used to have to pay for, they're now having to pay for as well, and some of the things that used to always be there are now unavailable. So there's been a huge amount of change in terms of what schools are paying out.
And at the school gates, they're worried.
They don't get the same one-to-one as they need to, especially if they're starting to struggle a little bit with something. There's 30 kids to one teacher. It's a lot. I wouldn't want to be a teacher. Just putting myself in that position. Just with two children myself, finding myself split between two is quite hard. I can't think where they're going to pull the money from, but they need to pull it from somewhere, because the education, they're the future, aren't they?
What if something goes wrong? What if the roof falls in and they can't pay for it? And then, children need teachers and teaching assistants and everything to look after them. And if they go, then there's not going to be much of a school.
And that's a very real fear. We're on our way to another school just a few miles up the road in Hebden Bridge. The Association of Head Teachers say the government's own figures show that a staggering £2.8 billion has been cut from schools' budgets in the last 3 years. And we're about to see the effect of that. Judy's taking me to meet Rachel Burton, head teacher at Riverside Junior School in Hebden Bridge. She's an ex-police officer and she now runs a school on a very tight budget.
Hello.
It's going to make me really popular.
Is it Rachel?
It is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Judy, and this is Nick, Martin.
Rachel, I'm Nick. Nice to see you. Shall we have a look at some of the problems that you've got?
What you're about to see is the reality faced by thousands of teachers and their pupils in schools each day. Welcome to the school where the classroom roof falls in.
We came upstairs and the class teacher was actually sat in that corner, at which point then a lump of concrete did drop. Luckily it hit the side and didn't hit the class teacher. Again, it's all
Rachel
the
says her
that all
budget
needs,
is at breaking point,
using.
and
We
it's
couldn't
taking
use
its
the
toll on the school.
The only way we could use it.
Concrete dropped from here.
Yes, it actually fell there while Miss Taylor was sat there, because I watched it.
So you've sort of built this as a false wall, so to speak?
Yeah, so if you look over, it's a false wall because all of this is
unsafe.
As a cheap, quick fix, a wall was put up to keep the kids safe. Because they were learning about the Romans, they called it Hadrian's Wall to make the best of it. The children are still taught in here.
That's come through again, so it's obviously with the rain starting again.
Room after room is damp or crumbling or flaking.
We're now in the upstairs boys' toilets. Unfortunately, it has been made secure, but on past occasions prior, we've come in and there's been bits of concrete in the toilet, and it's all the gable end of this building because it's ornate type gabling. It all needs repointing.
It smells down.
And this is where the cook gets changed and puts her clothing on and things like that. This is the cook's, you know, annex to the kitchen.
What's getting you down seeing this?
Especially when it came down, yeah, because it was obviously, it has been painted, it's not very old.
The wood is just literally coming away from the window. I mean, that's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
But it's not a priority.
It's not a priority.
There's other toilets in the building. But it's actually a requirement to have a toilet next to a catering kitchen.
Yep,
Talk about a crumbling school.
In another classroom, water has trickled down onto the electrics.
Yeah. This has appeared very, very recently. You can see how new that is. If these get very water heavy, Judy will know, they just fall. Yeah. And
on the kids.
And it could fall on the kids, so we have to monitor and we have to change. Again, it's costing, but you're spending money to patch things up. Well,
this, the nightmare story being written across the country.
It's modern Britain, and it should be better than this. 6 hours a day children are spending learning in this classroom, interacting, being busy, the staff are here. They're not good enough working conditions.
There you have a classroom full of kids, a teacher trying to teach, and the building is literally falling apart around them.
The community around Judy's school is struggling. Crime is rising in Soby Bridge. Police numbers have been cut by 20%. Antisocial behaviour is up by a fifth. And social services budgets have also been cut.
We would certainly feel that other services are so stretched that they can't provide those services that I'm sure they would like to, and because schools are the ones that day in, day out see the children and see the families, and I think because of all those cuts, because we see the children day in, day out, we're trying to hold everything together for them, but with increasing challenges and pulls on our time and our resources, you have to pick up the pieces, don't you? Or you see a child go hungry or not have adequate clothing, and that isn't something that any of us want to see happen.
And you're not getting any more money for that?
No, we're getting less money.
So the sums aren't adding up?
No, not at all.
And if a child needs specialist help, and that's more likely in deprived areas, then the school has to find the money.
Schools have to find the first £6,000 of the funding for that as well, which is obviously quite significant. So if you've got 2 or 3 children in a school this size, which is a very normal number to have, that's obviously £12,000, £18,000 that has got to be taken out of our budget that we don't get any extra money for whatsoever.
So what's the alternative? It's just not funded?
It's just not funded, yeah, and we've kind of got to muddle through.
The Department for Education says it's making funding for schools fairer, as well as offering advice to teachers on how to save money.
Schools are being asked to do more, and they have faced some cost increases that other employers are also facing, such as employers' national insurance contributions. But standards are rising, both in terms of the proportion of schools judged good or outstanding, and the reading ability of pupils, young pupils, is increasing. And we're helping schools to tackle some of those extra costs, particularly the non-staff costs, £10 billion a year. We're helping them to buy computers and energy and recruitment fees more cheaply.
I'm meeting a local campaign group who are fighting cuts in local schools here. Sue's a former teacher, Rob was a head for many years, and John's still a governor.
How long can it go on for? I don't know. I think we're in a crisis already. I think we're getting to a breaking point.
I'm sick to death of hearing from Nick Gibb about how we can save on colour photocopying and turning the light bulbs off. I speak to head teachers who've got people working in the dark from their own choice because they want to actually save on the electricity bills. I mean, what a state of affairs.
If I needed a speech therapist or an educational psychologist, then I contacted the local authority, and there they were. What many people
but all that had to be paid for, didn't it?
Well, it was provided by the local authority.
So is it fair to say that for all those years that head teachers went, can I have this?
Yeah.
And it just arrived. Was that not just a little bit naive that, well, the system cannot sustain that kind of, can I have it? Yes, you can.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, because what are we doing? I mean, we are preparing today's children for tomorrow's world, for tomorrow's economy.
We will see the problems that have come out of this funding crisis in 20, 30 years' time. Some clever person will say, these problems now we've got 30 years down the road are down to what this government did.
Schools have for a long time been at the centre of their communities, but many of those communities have fundamentally changed. They need the schools as much as the schools need them. It's a fragile relationship.
If small schools like this one were to disappear from these communities, they're going to leave a great big hole. There's actually a lyric from a song that I find myself saying over and over again, and it's there's a hole in my neighbourhood down which of late I cannot help but fall. And that's how it's going to be.
If a school like this was to shut, you worry that a lot of our families would get lost in a system.
I always expected to manage a budget. What I didn't expect to be doing is knocking plaster off walls or painting walls or, helping prop things up with my site manager. Budgets are tight now and they're only going to get tighter.
It's not rocket science. These children, when they leave education, are not going to have had the same deal as those that came before. It's going to affect employment, it's going to affect training, and I just don't think it's fair.
It used to be a job that people wanted to do, and now not so much.
It feels like teachers and the government are set on a collision course. In the middle, children and their education. Nick Martin, Sky News.